Well, hello everyone. My name is Joe. I'm the VP of Growth Marketing at People.ai, where we are building what we believe is the best revenue operations and intelligence platform. I lead our growth marketing team, which includes demand gen, sales development, and most recently our user acquisition practice for our PLG product. I've been doing demand gen type work for the last almost 15 years of my career. I've led sales development teams and built sales development teams at 2 of my jobs, and currently I'm building out the sales development team at People.ai, where in the last year we've gone from about 2 BDRs when I started, and we're about to expand to 14 by the end of the year. So it's been a really exciting time of growth and just building for us. And it all starts with what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, when David and Pete and I were talking about what am I going to talk about at Tenbound, they asked me to speak about pipeline modeling. And I thought, man, they must really hate me. And then when I heard, oh, they put me first, I thought, man, they must really hate you. Because really, what we're going to spend the next 20, 30 minutes talking about is math. And I know the moment I say math, algebra, your eyes glaze over. You start thinking back to college calculus, and this is probably what you're thinking you're about to get in the next 30 minutes. I'm hoping to make it a little bit simpler than this. So when I talk about business algebra, what am I really talking about? I'm not going to give you an equation or anything like that, but really what I'm talking about is all the variables that go into hitting your goals and understanding how your goals ultimately impacts business revenue, right? This is going to look different for all of us. We all work in different companies, B2B, B2C. Some of us are selling, $500,000, $1 million deals. Maybe others of us are selling $10,000 deals. Some of us might have a big inbound machine. Others might be enterprise focused and primarily focused on outbound. So all this is going to look a little bit different for us. But whenever I'm talking about pipeline planning, business algebra, what I'm really talking about is, do you understand all the variables, all the levers, all the actions, all the activities, all the MQLs and the downloads that go into hitting what I'm guessing most of us probably goal ourselves on is our pipeline goals? And do I understand how that pipeline contributes to business revenue, to ultimately what your CFO is looking at as they evaluate your performance? And another way to put it is, do I understand all the activities that lead to pipeline? And do I understand how the pipeline I generate or I influence actually impacts revenue? Why is this important? Ultimately, it demonstrates command of your business. Few jobs ago, two things kind of happened at the same time that kind of sucked for me. One, my boss decided to leave. And then the other, we hired our first CFO. So that dynamic, if that doesn't scare you, it probably should. Because all of a sudden, I thought, man, the last 2 years of work I did is going to come into question, and I've lost my biggest executive champion. And then a few days later, after this all happens, I get a meeting in my calendar from the CFO saying, want to understand your business, come prepare to chat. And I'm like, crap. So I go and I pull up a bunch of slides. This is one of them that he particularly liked. And it broke down all the different channels I managed: inbound, outbound, field, ads. And it from the very beginning, I said, all right, an engagement is kind of like a click or a download. It said, from the very first click, I have command of my business all the way through revenue. And I could basically tell you for every dollar you've put into this channel, how much revenue you can expect. In other words, I dazzled him with data. Any EDC fans? If you are, you probably shouldn't be here today, because it was just this past weekend, right? Like, there's this moment when you go to these shows and it's like so dazzling, and you kind of just forget what it is you're talking about. And when we talk about command of the business, right, not command the message or whatever else you want, when we talk about command of your business, when you're on the line, when your CFO is digging in and saying, oh, is there some fat to cut here? Are you able to show the business algebra to basically say, oh yeah, this guy this person, this woman knows what they're doing? Next, business algebra is important because it provides quantifiable leverage to ask for more resources. So now CFO said, okay, Joe knows what he's doing. If I gave you $1, what can I expect in return? And this is where the math comes, and somehow we'll figure out a way to get you these slides. You could kind of dig in. But I basically showed him this, and I said, look, we all know I have an SQO goal, a sales qualified opportunity goal, a pipeline goal, whatever it is you call it. I can work up line by line, right? How many SQLs the sales development team needs to qualify, how many MQLs the marketing team needs to deliver, and all the way up to the number of engagements on all my different channels that need to be made by our target list to lead to those SQL goals. And right now we're at about $47 per engagement. So to hit some of these goals, I'm going to need a budget of $306,000. Right? Think about a lot of your budget conversations, maybe especially earlier in your career. How did they go? It's like, oh, my team's tired. I need another headcount. Or, oh, ads are working really well. Give me another $100,000 for ads. Right? CFOs don't typically respond to requests like that. Right? This is why business algebra is important. Finally, it validates your goal. It maps out how you will reach it. Now, for a lot of us, especially earlier in our career, how does your manager or your VP or your CRO give you your goal? Well, they kind of look at you and they go, $1 million. And this is a really funny moment in the movie. And I don't know, some of you guys might not even watch this, but why is this such a ridiculous moment in the movie? Because this is in the early 2000s or late 90s. And by this time, $1 million is like nothing. Well, I mean, it's a lot, but it's not this crazy maniacal, you should probably be saying $1 billion. And I think a lot of times when goals are given to us, it's kind of like that. We have no idea what actually went into that revenue target, that pipeline goal. And as leaders, because we don't know how to calculate what it should be, we just accept it. So what's the equation to success? So I gave you the why, told you why you should pay attention to me right now. Hopefully wake up, get your coffee. So what's the actual equation to success? Well, this might seem simple, but it all starts with revenue. And what I mean by that is it all starts with understanding what your company's revenue target is and what slice of the pie you kind of influence in the midst of that. So let's make up a company. I didn't realize when I was writing this talk, the hardest thing to do would be make up a company and rebuild all my pipeline models to have fake data. That was actually the longest time. So let's make up a company. I made up an ARR target that, let's say our goal this year is to generate $14 million as a company. And probably there's some negotiation that's happening between you and the CRO or the CFO or the CEO or your boss that says, what part of that pie do I own? So for us at People.ai, I signed up because I was just building the team for 33% of the pie. We're going to model today based on 40% of net business ARR target. And so understand this. And for some of you, you might say, well, I don't really touch this. I'm just given a number. At least understand how this number came to be. Ask the hard questions. Why? Why is 14 million the revenue target for the company? Is it a board given number to hit a certain multiple so that that you could exit at a certain valuation, right? Like understanding all these mechanics at the revenue level is going to really help you understand, one, are you resourced correctly? Is your goal realistic? And two, is it a company worth sticking by? Right? Secondly, calculate pipeline goal. And this is kind of the initial title of my talk, but do it correctly. I've been doing this probably for as long as demand gen was a big thing. And I cannot believe how few ops people actually know how to calculate a pipeline goal. It's unbelievable to me. I would say 4 out of 5 ops people I meet, sales ops, rev ops, marketing ops, whatever your partner is, and if you're here, Love you guys. You guys are awesome. But this is one thing where I'm always shocked. What's this pipeline model is really wonky. And this is why. How most sales ops people, or honestly, sales leaders I've encountered, calculate their pipeline goals. They basically look at their gross ARR target. So for Acme Corp is $14 million. And they break that down. All right, we're a high growth company. So for Q1, we're going to do 2 million. For Q2, we're going to do 3 million. And they say, what's our coverage needed to succeed? So industry best, 33% win rate. So if I enter Q1 with $6 million of pipe coverage, we're going to hit our goal. And so for Q1, marketing, sales development team, your goal is to generate $6 million of pipeline. It's funny, I shouldn't tell the story. But so many folks, probably a lot of us in the room, this is exactly how you calculate your pipeline goals. And it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Just really simply think about it. When deal cycles are longer than a quarter, which I'm guessing most of us in B2B are, the pipeline you generate today won't impact your ARR goal this quarter. Fundamentally, if you understand this about pipeline setting, you're one step ahead of the curve of a lot of your ops partners, at least in my experience. So how do we actually calculate pipeline goals? Well, there's a lot of variables to consider, and this is why it's such a complicated exercise, and I'm not going to actually be able to walk through each of these with you, and if you want to schedule a Zoom call with me, very happy to do that. But here's some of the variables to consider. Pipeline coverage target, which we've talked about in the last. That's basically how much pipeline you need to enter a quarter, and it's typically calculated by your win rate. So if you have a win rate of 33% from qualified pipeline, you need to enter the quarter at 3x, because a third of that pipeline is going to actually close, right? If you want to give yourself a little bit of buffer, you might want to try to enter the quarter at 3.5x, right? That kind of gives you a baseline for how much pipeline you need to enter the quarter. Now then you need to calculate, all right, my quarter's coming up. Let's look at Q1. I need 3x coverage. How much pipeline do I need to generate from now until Q1 to enter the quarter in 3x coverage? And now all the variables come into play. So deal cycle. If you have a 3-month deal cycle, well, the pipeline I generate today is going to close in 3 to 4 months, right? So I need to generate pipeline for my target if you have a 1-year deal cycle, that makes the model a lot more complicated, because the pipeline I generate today is going to impact my goal a year from now. Then you have average selling price, right? And that's going to change as the model gets more complex by segment and geo and all those things. You have attribution targets. So this is dividing up the pie. All right, marketing, you take this. Sales development, you take this. Sales, you take this. Partnerships, you take this, right? Then you also need to build in current open pipe. What I mean by that is, let's say I need to enter next quarter with $3 million of coverage, but I already have $1 million of open pipe that's scheduled to close in Q1. So actually my pipeline goal now becomes $2 million. Does that make sense? I know I'm going through a lot of math very quickly. We'll try to get this deck in your hands. Then there's so this is the basics, I think, of a basic pipeline model, right? New startup, single product shop, one segment. You're just starting to build things out. These are the variables, I think, that go into a simple pipeline model. Then your org starts to grow. It gets more complex. You start having upsell deals. You start having a segmented sales team with mid-market enterprise strat. Now you need to start getting different tracks in your pipeline model. You might have different product lines, right? Some might have a 3-month deal cycle. Others might have a 9-month deal cycle. And now you can start to see the model gets more complicated. You can start to see why a lot of times, especially in startup land, a lot of young ops leaders have no idea how to start building this. And you can start to see why it's so important for us as emerging revenue leaders to really understand how to build pipeline models. And then finally, there's advanced stuff where it's waiting by opportunity stage, and I'm not even there yet. I think Pete knows something about this, so you could go bug him if you want to know more. So let's start calculating a pipeline model for Acme Corp. We start with our ARR target. Always start with the revenue. We have a 33% win rate, so we have our coverage goals. To get from coverage goals to pipeline generation goals, we're looking at coverage, average deal cycle 1 quarter out. So the pipeline I generate today needs to close a quarter from now. And I've built in push into the model. Push is basically, if I have pipeline that's supposed to close next quarter, typically 15% of that gets pushed out a quarter, 10% of that gets pushed out 2 quarters, 5% of that gets pushed out 3 quarters. Made those numbers up. It's going to look different for all of your organizations. But this is going to start giving us now an actual pipeline generation goal that's going to help you predictably understand what you need to generate today to be successful tomorrow. One thing you should always check out is your pipeline generation goal should typically, especially for a high growth company, be a lot higher than your pipe coverage goal, right? Because again, you're generating a pipeline today that you need to close a quarter, 2, 3 quarters from now. And so this is a really easy way to check in your own org. How has my ops team calculated my goal? Well, ask 2 questions. Hey, what's our coverage goal for the year? Or, how much coverage do we need this year to get to our goal? Like most ops people know how to figure that out. Is that higher or lower than the amount of pipeline you need to generate this year? Probably should be lower. And then as you think about your own org, whether you represent marketing or sales development or as a certain team in sales, you start looking at other variables like deal type, whether it's new business or upsell, what you're signing up for, what's your contribution, so for this model, I said 40% of new business. The segment you represent, so we segment out our model to enterprise and mid-market, and then finally the ASPs, because that's going to kind of give you an average for especially those of us in sales development. How many SQOs do I need to generate? Right, and that's going to be some kind of combined enterprise pipeline. It's going to be 10 SQOs, and mid-market pipeline is going to be 50 SQOs. Right. So again, this is a lot, but you can study it. So, and I have a gift for you all. I actually zeroed out my model template that I've built over the years with various ops leaders. There's a link in this deck if you get it. If you need it, email me. It's definitely not built for you just to plug and play, but all the equations and stuff. So if you really want to study what I'm talking about, there's a Google Sheet that I'm happy to send you. So now that we have our pipeline goals, we start modeling the activities that needed to succeed. So this is starting to answer the question, is this goal realistic? And do I have a step, right? As we think about 22 planning, do I have a path to hit my goal? It's all algebra. First, you break out your various demand funnels, and depending on probably how high you are in the organization, you're going to have more demand funnels, right? So for me, this is actually, I say Acme Corp, but this is basically what I own at People.ai. There's an inbound funnel, right? This is the MQL machine that's just sending over hand raisers to our SDR team. There's our product-led growth funnel. This is we have a freemium product called People Glass, and we're trying to get free users. And at some point in their usage of that product, they're going to keep product qualified lead, and we send them over to the sales team to try to upsell. And then finally, there's kind of our BDR outbound funnel. I think very ones of us are going to have different funnels in our responsibility. And then you break it into the different segments, and literally you work your way up. Again, you start at the bottom. You start with revenue, and you start seeing, if you're in my position, based on historicals, where do I think I'm going to land this year in terms of my 3 funnels? So I said, all right, I think my inbound machine could probably take 25% of that. My PLG machine could probably take 25% of that, and my outbound machine is going to take 50% of that. And then I literally work my way up. And this is kind of like a worksheet, right? So you might start at 10, 10, and 80, and then realize, wow, like that's way too much dependence on the outbound team. You might go at 33, 33, 33, and then you might realize, man, my inbound machine is not going to generate this is kind of the workshop version, and you just work your way up. You kind of do the math, and if you need help doing the math, email me. And all of a sudden now you have like all the metrics that you need to start generating this year to try to meet your revenue goals. My marketing team needs to generate 15,000 contacts or leads. My PLG machine, my product needs to sign up 4,300 new users. And my SDR team needs to add 8,700 new contacts into outreach sequences. And if they can successfully do that, I'm within reason of hitting my goal this year. You can start to do some analysis. So the data here is all different, but this is actually the exact same conversion rates that I walked into this year. And so these colors are exactly how I analyzed my machine. And when I looked at the machine, I basically saw, man, 15,000 inbound leads. I think last year we generated like 5. I think there's high risk here. Right? I need a 3x the number of inbound leads that come in. There's high risk here. And the reason there's high risk is that MQL to S1 conversion is 2%. Right? And you start to really understand your shop, where the risks are and where you need to invest. And so the first thing I did in Q1 when I did this analysis was I worked on SDR SLA work. Because I'm like, we're sending them a lot of leads, they're not converting. So I trained them on outbound. Actually, Pete trained them on outbound, I should say. And we really figured out our ops and that handoff so that we could increase that conversion rate. The other thing you can do is now you could start having really educated conversations with your CFO. Because now I can also go, all right, on average, my cost per lead is $60. My cost per new user into PLG is $100. So to hit these goals as they currently stand, I'm going to need, 1.3 million budget. Now, there's still going to be a lot of back and forth and debate, but at least you're opening the conversation from an educated position. Finally, you got to utilize key metrics from the algebra to report success. And so you have the model, you have the budget. How do you continue to show value to the organization? Well, it all comes back again to the algebra. I'll just show you a few examples of this. So this is my DG dashboard. And this is how I've arranged it. Line 1 is all about revenue contribution. Line 2 is about marketing engagements as MQLs. Line 3 is about opportunities by source. Line 4 is about pipeline by source. If you haven't noticed, this is exactly the chart that I basically showed you guys earlier, right? Like I've modeled it out. I've modeled out my path to success, and now I've built my dashboard in a way that shows me every step of the way, every day. I look at this probably 3 times a day, how the org is doing. Also, anytime my CFO wants to chat about performance, or my CEO, I pull this up and I constantly promote myself as a profit center, not a cost center. Department QBR. So this is a slide right out of one of our QBRs that we do as a marketing team. And you notice front and center is marketing generated pipe. This is my North Star metric. Anyone in my company, if you ask them, what is Joe about? My hope is they should all say pipeline. And in everything I do, I talk about how much pipeline have I contributed to the business, because I understand exactly what slice of the revenue pie that pipeline is influencing. I think one of the biggest things as I work with young leaders, they get so lost in the right side of this, right? The activities, the meetings, the MQLs, whatever it is. And first and foremost, you should be concentrating on the North Star, the thing that you want to be known for within the organization. And finally, here's a weekly active report one of my SDR managers sent basically to my boss and I. On the left side, he has accomplishments, calls and emails activities, and then he lists out all the S1s, the new opportunities that were generated. And as we work together on this, we turned it into more, all right, here's the accomplishments and the focuses, and we really focused in on the metrics that mattered from a week-to-week basis. What are the opportunities generated outbound and inbound? What is the pipeline generated? We call them NBMs, it's confusing. And then finally, activities. Right, so as you start thinking about your org and business algebra, it's going to impact everything you do from a planning perspective all the way down to a day-to-day reporting up perspective. So we'll end where we started. Why is business algebra important? Well, it demonstrates command of your business. It provides quantifiable leverage to ask for more resources. It validates goals and maps out how you'll reach it. I hope as I've shared a glimpse of how I do this process, that I come off as someone who has command of my business, who knows how to use numbers to get resources, and who can validate that, hey, I'm going to be successful next year with the goals given. And my hope is, as we start digging into this together as a community, that we would all come off more this way. So we have a few minutes left. Happy to answer any quick questions we might have if you have those. Want to give one quick plug. Come talk to us at our booth. We'll actually give you $5 to learn about our PLG product, People Glass, and sign up. And so if you want a cup of Starbucks today, come chat with us. And I look forward to having more conversations with everyone. Are we doing Q&A or how's that working? Yeah, okay, cool. So happy to answer any questions. Yeah, in the back.
So when you run an average on the deal size or deal length of that specific stage, your entire metrics are thrown off.
Yep.
A wide number of those. So that's just one that comes to mind.
Yep.
So I'm just curious, given that I know this is a lot of information to pour over, but if there's a specific principle that keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, so when I joined People.ai a year ago, we probably weren't actually too much ahead of what you just described to a certain degree. So I definitely am not saying like you need some very advanced, robust ops structure to do this. What I would say is two things. If your data is bad, if your historicals are bad, lean on two things: benchmarks. So Topo and Serious Decisions used to be the best for benchmarks. A little bit harder to find now in Gartner and Forrester, but use benchmarks. So like the MQL conversion goals, S1 conversion goals, there are benchmarks that will break down for you by industry and by how big your deals are, what those conversion goals are. And then for things like a deal cycle length, use targets and gut feeling. So you could probably look at all your deals and just exclude all the outliers. Could be 50% of your deals. Who knows? But at least for the 50 that you kind of generally say, hey, this is like my ideal sales process, run the analytics on that. And then at least you have a starting point, which you can build off of. So great question, though. Oh, sorry. Yeah. For our online friends. Hello, everyone online.
All right, it's on. So the question I have for you is, in this example that you've given regarding the cost for leads that are coming through, you had $60.
Yep.
My question is that equivalent to customer acquisition costs? Is that what we're referring to? And it's a two-part question, so I'm going to wait for your response on that one.
Yep. Oh, so no. In that specific example, it really is the cost for an inbound lead. So that's for us, that's an ebook download, a webinar cost. If you notice one of my earlier slides, I even broke that down for that CFO who called me into a meeting, the cost for an engagement. So I even went a step further there and said, hey, I think clicks and attendance and ebook down, I think all that matters. So let's actually combine that all into a cost for an engagement score to start giving a benchmark of what kind of budget I need. So it's definitely not CPA or just CPA.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you in real life.
Yeah.
We chatted. Curious on kind of going back to your different demand funnels on the attribution model, because I think that's a place where we get stuck. Our RevOps team does as well, kind of going back and forth the last few weeks too right now. So it's timely on original source versus influence, but the SDRs make it more complicated because there's the overlay our team works with the channel partners and with the marketing leads, of course, and then outbound. So how do you kind of overlay the SDR attribution model, thinking about, most recent versus original source?
Yeah. So attribution is probably one of the most controversial things you could ever talk about, and there's no single silver bullet to this question. So here's my opinion on I tend to, two thoughts. One, I think the most important thing about attribution models is that everyone in your go-to-market team agrees what it is, and that you're building your goals under that agreement, right? So, for example, some teams have gone to basically shared pipeline source. So attribution doesn't matter actually in terms of a source perspective, but it's all about influence. So marketing starts to evaluate their performance based on how they calculate pipeline influence. Sales development starts to calculate by pipeline influence. But if your sales leaders are thinking, no, I want actual opportunities sourced by marketing, that's instantly going to be conflict, right? So I think that's the most important thing, right? Does everyone agree what the model is, and are you building your goals based on that agreement? In terms of specifically how I would think about attribution as a marketing and an ops leader in the past, first, the crawl version is last touch. It's what's the last significant thing that happened to generate the opportunity, right? So it might not even be like a full last touch, and this probably only works if you have like less deals coming in, and you don't need a big automated model. But we actually, for the last year, we manually stamp our last touch, and we basically look at the activity and go, what was the last significant thing that happened? Was it a field event? Was it an outbound call? And we just stamp it. And so at least for a year now, while we get our crap together, we have a general sense of where things are coming from. Pretty quickly after that, as a demand gen leader, you're going to need a first touch. First touch is going to give you the channel attributions. Is this coming from an ad? Is this coming from an event? All of those things, because that's going to help me decide where to put resources in. And then you go on the multi-touch journey, and this is probably where you need to actually hire a seasoned RevOps leader who can act, or hire an agency or whatever to take you through this journey, because that's where a lot of the debate and the alignment starts to happen. But I would consider, like you can run a business really successfully before you get to that point. So we could chat more about my experience there. So cool. Well, I think I'm out of time. So really, I'll be here most of the rest of the day. Happy to talk more into this. Shoot me an email, joe.lee@people.ai if you want access to anything, and happy to share. So thank you so much. You've been a great audience.